So the UN came out first with their report in 2019 and said, we want to sell food by the 1/1000th of a calorie. And on the heels of that, DARPA came out and said, well, we want to sell food by the molecule. And I wondered, how in the world are they going to do this? So this 3D printed food, doesn't it have any like vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin D, no antioxidants, no fiber in it? Those are all value added. So you can buy this 3D printed shell, if you will, of food. And then if you want a little vitamin C or a little vitamin A in it, you pay extra value added product.
All right. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Guess who came out to visit? Celeste Solum. What are we going to talk about today? I'm always about this Tonga eruption ruining Southern Hemisphere crop production. It's coming to the point now where it's measurable. I got this video I've been working on to try to get it out today with Australian temperatures definitely measuring each month a little cooler, where it's measurable after the eruption, which is going to probably take 50% of agricultural production down out of the Southern Hemisphere. So where does that then leave us for the Northern Hemisphere? That's the question. And Celeste, we wanted to talk about cornucopia. We're coming into Thanksgiving, something I hadn't heard really much about, and suddenly, whoosh, this is on the dinner table for me. So, yeah, well, we're just going to have a little tennis session here with the ideas. Nothing planned or written out. We're just going to throw our 2 cents and 2 cents, and we got 4 cents here, don't we?
Actually, before we go to cornucopia, since you brought up the Southern Hemisphere and what's going on volcanically and that things may be cooling down, we've got a DARPA project called ICE. And for about 4 or 5 years now, DARPA has been manipulating and restructuring ICE so that you actually can get, you or me, and you know, we're both homesteaders, so this impacts us and our ability to grow food. The freezing point of, so it could be 50 degrees and freezing, it could be 0 degrees and raining, and you're not going to know which it's going to be depending on what weather manipulation they're going to do. And they are restructuring plants with a like a de-icing. You know, sometimes people have de-icers in their windshield wipers, but just think about the consequences of eating a plant with de-icer. I really don't know if that is, because they're restructuring a plant for this. So it's another factor that we need to be concerned about as far as our food supply.
So I'm wondering, okay, so they've started a program, let's say any program A, so we'll talk with the de-icing in the plant. Like what percentage of the entire U.S. crop is already has that feature in it, and then also the entire global crop, talking hundreds of millions of tons, 1 billion tons. So how much of that total do you think is in play in that program? Like 1/10 of 1% of U.S. production currently?
So the program has been going on. I've been watching the restructuring of ICE program starting in its nascency. So we're probably 5 years into the program actually, and now they've got the actual, you can look on the DARPA.mil site under news and see the ICE program. So this is going to change the paradigm for growing plants. I'm really concerned about it, especially because of, you know, if we typically know that 32 plants will start to freeze, maybe a little bit, you know, above that, a little bit below, depending on if you've got cold front or warm front and how it all plays out. So how people first noticed this, do you remember a couple of years ago when people were able to catch the snow on fire?
And it didn't burn. I'd seen a few videos, and I didn't know if it was really real or not, but I'd seen a couple videos on that. Yes, I did.
So that actually they are mixing the rain and the snow, the nucleus for the rain, with polymers, plastic polymers, to get this restructuring. And so people actually did videos, and they actually could catch the snow on fire, and it would burn, and it smelled like burnt plastic. So that was like the beginning of this restructuring of the snow and ice. But the next phase now is going to put it up like a de-icer molecularly into plants.
Yeah, because videos I saw, they were trying to use lighters and different things to get the snow to melt, and it would not melt. So we've seen two different separate things with snow videos. Mine was they had the lighter, and I watched them, and it just turned the snow black, like it went up around, and it not even a single drop of water come out. And I was like, that is the strangest thing. So again, it's hard to tell, with videos, are they real or are they not? Is somebody, pulling a fast one over? I always try to, search out a bunch more resources before to say if it's true or not. The world's becoming so complex. Like I say, it really feels like it's being run by AI, and if it is, then the complexity can increase every single second because it doubles its knowledge base within fractions of a second. So the world, if you think it's becoming more complex, is because it literally is, with the complexity of AI is running things as it achieves integration of the world's next thought and can process that out and then throw the matrix back out, say, do this, do that, do this. And with things, see things change in a day instead of a month or a year when humans had to figure it out.
So did you see that video where I don't know the language for the UK, but somebody in the House of Lords brought in the robot, and it was a robot artist. And it was very interesting what the man said is that, okay, we've got this beautiful panorama of forest and trees, some deciduous, some evergreen, that AI, this artist AI, every single time, it could be the exact same image that you're seeing behind us, would paint it differently. It would interpret it differently every single time. But when we see like a green grass, it's a green grass, but to AI, it's going to look at it differently each time and interpret it differently. I thought that was very interesting and telling for the days to come, because a lot of our imagery now is being composed by AI. So if in fact they are actively doing artistic renderings of different things that, could it be cultural things, could it be our food supply, could it be a number of things, it can be a different picture each time. And it's not that AI is doing it wrong, it's just that it's interpreting, or it is programmed to look at it differently. Then, when we see grass, we see grass. And, might be green, might be yellow. So it's just interesting things that we just have to be aware of for the days ahead. There's deep fakes out there. Like you said, you really can't trust. You have to really check your sources and make sure. But those videos started popping up at the same time I was seeing information in the journals. So I look at 150 journals, and each journal has 50 studies, and I do that twice a week. So
yes, if something new is popping out,
yeah,
I keep looking for this peer-reviewed research on optic aerosol depth to try to validate where that ash cloud has been spreading. So every week I'm diving in again to see, does nature have something, Link, Springer, I don't know, there's a lot of different ones out there that you can go to, PDF search engines, which by the way, I'll say, the amount of information on the PDF search engine keeps getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I'm like, I used to do an enormous amount of research on PDF search engines, and it's really becoming very, very limited in scope on what you can get. Before, if you went to one of the sites where you could find some journal, and reviewed research that was out there, most times behind a paywall. If you went to PDF search engine, you can find almost 98% of the stuff that it wasn't paywalled. And I never understood why a government finding and a study that you're paying your tax dollars for, you have to go pay for behind a paywall when that information should be released out and just open for anybody in terms of anything climate data wise. NOAA doing all their thing, but then they slam it behind a paywall. But it used to work really well, the PDF search engine, but now it's really very limited.
A lot of things
Information's
are going
shrinking.
Yeah, it's going extinct. So I was always on the space weather front. I was always referring my followers to NASA space weather enthusiasts, and all of a sudden, a couple months ago, it went dark. So now you have no choice but to go to NOAA to get your 3-day space weather forecast, and that's really important for all biological life, for our plants, for the behavior of the animals and ourselves, and even for growing plants. So, but we're stuck with NOAA, one source, and that source, are they telling you the truth? Are they not? We just have no way to verify because there's no other source now, where we used to be able to have 2 sources.
Yeah, and the satellites always seem to malfunction when a comet hits the sun or something like this. There's a lot of skipping frames, missing frames, hours of lost something when it hits, and whoosh, you get a CME coming out. It does seem that they're trying to mask a little more data that can be provable, especially now that we're heading into the Southern Hemisphere year without a summer. Because you got to realize that food is the most important thing to keep our society moving, and without the food, society literally stops. Because you're starving and I put a 5-pound bar of gold next to you, you're too weak to pick it up.
I'm going to pick the food every time.
You're going to pick the food every time. That drumstick's going to be way tastier than a kilo bar of gold. But you'll find that the more this is being understood by the general populace, the more distractions are being thrown out at us, and the intensity of the distractions as well. Because, if you look at lockstep in terms of what happened since this volcanic eruption, and it was in January of 2022, so it's been a full 9 months. And look at all the events that have transpired, that our world is so mixed upside down now that the crop losses had to be explained away. The bottlenecks in manufacturing with the energy shortages in Europe explain away why there won't be enough fertilizer next year. And herbicide and pesticide, not a fan, just saying this is how it's done. If you're in the real deal with the real world on big ag, that really produces a lot of your food. But then to explain away crop losses, instead of it was the sun, it was the volcano, then what? Then, oh no, it was the war, it was this, it was the energy shortage, we don't have enough food. Now I can already tell you how they're going to roll out the news in the next 6 months, just based on what they've taken away from our world already. That will be the excuse for what's happening. Because it seems that whatever the news could never come out cleanly and say, you know what, Tonga erupted, year without a summer. We should have gotten forewarning after, day number 3 that it was the largest eruption since Tambora in 1815. But here we are 9 months later, and some news outlets, luckily in print media, are starting to pick it up and talk about it as the highest volcanic ash emission. And by the way, the water vapor, that was the craziest thing I've seen. When it was coming up, satellite measurement, the water vapor went so high up, and actually it looked like it misted out the lenses in the satellite. That's how high it went up. Incredible stuff, but it's finally starting to break news here. And once people put 2 and 2 together, that your food is gone, we're not going to grow 50% of the crops in the Southern Hemisphere. We got all these things that are happening up north here that we already familiar with. You go red in the face talking about it. That realization of food's going to double, triple in price, and there won't be enough to feed the planet. Once that sinks in, there's got to be some other things happening to control the masses at that point.
But they have an answer.
What's the answer?
The answer is cornucopia.
Oh, there we go.
So, cornucopia, for those of you who are students of history, used to be this basket that was filled to the brim with fruit and vegetables.
Thanksgiving.
Yes, it's where Thanksgiving, it's like the logo for Thanksgiving. And so DARPA has this cornucopia project, and they have food for you. But it's not food growing in your garden. It's not heirloom. It is produced from air. It's 3D printed. There you go, 3D printed food. It can be plant or meat. It can be anything, but it's 3D printed. And it's air, water, electricity, and a few weaponized microbes from the new Manhattan, Kansas BSL-4 lab in Manhattan, Kansas. And that is the food of the future. DARPA and the UN. So the UN came out first with their report in 2019 and said, we want to sell food by the 1/1000th of a calorie. And on the heels of that, DARPA came out and said, well, we want to sell food by the molecule. And I wondered, how in the world are they going to do this? So this 3D printed food, doesn't it have any like vitamin C, vitamin A, vitamin D, no antioxidants, no fiber in it? Those are all value added. So you can buy this 3D printed shell, if you will, of food. And then if you want a little vitamin C or a little vitamin A in it, you pay extra value added product. So
what about people like myself out here? I could walk up to my, what do we have for vitamin C that's around here? We could go with, there's plenty of berries around here, red berries. What are they going to do with that? Say you can't grow your own food on your own property.
The UN has this new mandate that they've been soft pedaling it. Oh, we're getting dive bombed by birds. Is that a jay?
No, there are lots of birds out here.
Oh, it sounds like a blue jay.
Could be.
So the UN has been soft pedaling this mandate. It's actually been around for quite some time, but they know that it's not going to be popular, so they're really going slow on it. But it's picking up the pace, and nothing from nature. So there's this.
Well, how do they stop me from picking fruit on my own property?
Because it'll be illegal for you to pick it.
A lot of things are illegal.
Yeah, I know. But so I'll tell you a story. So this is about 25 years.
Citizens arrest.
Yeah. Well, let's just say there's a lot of satellites up there right now. So it was the fall, and there was a burn ban in my area. And I lived in the rural, like you're seeing now. And I had like this much paper to burn. I mean, it was just going to flare for 5 seconds, and it was going to be ash.
In a burn barrel.
In a fire pit.
In a fire pit.
In a fire pit. And so I did it, and I was still outside. It was a nice fall evening. And this was about 10:30 at night. So I did it under the cover of darkness. Like 10 minutes later, screaming down my driveway come the fire trucks, and out they come, and they're like dousing the ashes, which it was ash by that time, and got busted by the satellite. That's how they're going to do it. Bust you by the satellite. And that was like 25 years ago. So you go pick up any of those berries over there, Yeah, I know.
We got a wild patch that's 300 feet long with about 30 feet deep of blackberries.
So, I think that we're going to have to be stealth in our growing operation, because it really is. They really want you to be dependent on their particular system. And we have our own systems, and we believe in those systems. And so, but we're going to have to be a little bit more stealth about it in the future. We're not going to be able to be as open Does that mean we maybe make a poncho out of like mylar so that we don't have a heat signature or something? It may be, in the days to come.
Yeah, and an avoidance, if you're going to use one of those, the best time to travel is right after the heat of the day when it starts to get a little cooler, and hiding in between the shadow lines there, because if they're going to be running some sort of thermal on that, it's going to be difficult to pick you out in that line because other things will glow hotter, and you can kind of get in between the tree line and the open field edge and kind of work your way through there. But that's where an enormous amount of stuff grows anyway, and on the stream beds and whatnot.
Yeah, also in wet forests after it's rained, and if you allow yourself to get wet, you're going to have less EMF, but you're also going to have less of a heat signature to pick you up. So in the days to come, satellites, you might just be careful, because they're picking up a lot of things. And many are very low orbiting satellites. If you want to watch on YouTube, there's a Professor Yah. It's J-A-H. And he shows you these most incredible images of all the space junk that's up there. Did you hear about that bolide that went into California?
I don't know.
Our mutual friend, Oppenheimer.
Yeah.
He picked it up. So...
Seems to be a lot of space debris coming down.
There is a lot. Did you hear about the February 5th?
Yeah, it's happening so frequently. It seems that our atmosphere, something is compressing in on it, not as in like a full sandwich like happened to, what was that, Pluto?
Right.
In 2020, I believe it was January or June of 2020. I'd have to go back. And then Neptune, the atmosphere reversed 6 months after that. Yeah, that was in December of 2020. So it seemed to be in 6 month increments. And then remember, Starlink tried to launch up and got all their satellites caught, and they said, oh, it's because there was a CME. But what does a CME having to do with putting extra drag in your orbit and your orbital launch parameters when there's a CME that your entire satellite launch got taken down because of too much atmospheric drag? This could be the very same thing happening with a lot of space junk, where it's just slightly, the top 10 miles might have compressed in, and it's just creating more drag up there, and there's a huge amount of stuff coming down, so something's causing that.
Well, on February 5th, 49 Starlinks went down in one day.
Yeah, that's the same launch event I'm talking. That's not normal.
They said it was the CME, but you know what it was? It was a laser war. In the military, it was a laser war, and so they were shot down. So just be aware that there is kind of a beginning hot war with this space junk, and I really like. You'll get a kick out of Professor Yah. He really knows his stuff as far as space junk and what's around, what should be there, what isn't. Monkey Works is another one.
Monkey Works is a good one to watch.
Yeah.
If I fire my pistol, they'll be quiet over there. Dog will run into the back. Sounds like we're getting a little outrageous over there.
So our puppies are down there excited about something.
Who knows what they found? A ground mole? They'll dig for hours following the tracks. Our whole yard's torn up, or the front field's torn up, chasing ground moles and stuff.
Well, that's a good thing. I taught Miss Zippy how to dig quackgrass. And I also, it was kind of funny. Actually, it's not funny, but you have to look at the humor of being a homesteader, So I like my raspberries at the peak of perfection of sweetness and the color. And so I go down and I'll touch raspberries. No, that one's not good. And I'll go down and get all the ones that I really love. But Miss Zippy is a scent dog, golden retriever. And so she goes down the row, and because my scent's on it, she picks those raspberries that I touched, that I was waiting for tomorrow to pick, and she eats them. So, I mean... Thanks
for picking out the good ones for me.
Yeah. Well, they were the ones I was going to pick tomorrow, but oh well.
We just don't know what a dog's flavor tastes are. The taste profile for a dog might be slightly different,
So before I came on my trip, I'm on this trip of the United States, I was canning 200 quarts of pumpkin and winter squash and dehydrating tomatoes, and I gave like 3 bushels to my producer of tomatoes, green tomatoes that weren't going to ripen, and I couldn't fit anything more in my car. And I would drop a few, and Mississippi would like snap them up. It was like, okay, it's good. It was good for her, but Mom was getting a little bit tired of, burning the midnight oil, and we were leaving the next morning. So
I got a green tomato story for you.
Okay, I've got one for you too.
All the old timers here, they take the green tomatoes, they wrap it in newspaper, and they just kind of put it somewhere and cool out of the sunlight, and right around December-ish, they'll ripen up, and they'll be like, just like you picked it off the vine in the middle of December or somewhere around, New Year. Like, how'd you get those fresh tomatoes? Well, you got to pick them green and wrap them in newspaper and put them away. That's my tomato story.
Okay. Well,
I know it was exciting, but please, all right, yeah.
So I've got my green tomato story. So my first book was a history book, and my great-grandfather's older brother lived in Missouri, and it was his second wife. And, they had hurricane lamps back then. They didn't have electricity, So he went to the pantry where the pies were kept, and he got himself a piece of green tomato pie. And he's sitting there and he's going, this is the most delicious green tomato pie you have ever made. And what did you do different? Did you use a different recipe? Because ladies back then would compare recipes, and every woman had the best, of course. And she goes, no, I didn't do anything different. So they turn on the hurricane lamp, and it was just covered with ants. So that was the flavoring. That was the difference. The secret ingredient was the little ants that they want us to eat.
I've heard they have a little bit of sourness to them. There's this American guy who travels around the world, world's best food review show, and he eats all this different kind of stuff, going to all the cultures, and he's been up in Africa this last few episodes, but eating the ants. And it's one thing he kept saying is like, all these ants have like a similar flavor of like adding a little bit of sourness into something. So maybe that was the secret ingredient, but I'm not really into eating the insects. I'm not.
No, especially now with this new bioweapon facility has an insectarium. God only knows what they're doing. Yeah, I mean, nothing good. I mean, if it's in a bio lab, but this is a new thing. It's the first time that there's been an insectarium in a bio facility, so we'll see what happens with that.
Yeah, because even out here, even on my own property, I really wouldn't want to eat grasshoppers. Nothing really is appealing of an insect for me, even out here where I know it's pretty natural. I don't spray much out here or anything unless I really have to on like a gravel bit or something. But I just can't see eating insects as being a viable protein source. Snowpiercer, that movie, they were churning all that stuff up for the back cabin or whatever, but how do you get people to switch over? How do you get people to switch their preferences?
Well,
put them under duress, maybe. Offer them no second choice, and then after 12 or 13 years, how long do you think it would take to get people to switch over to be like, all right, that's the food source of choice, that's the viable one, we do it now, it becomes the common one?
Well, I think they're slowly transitioning people from the historic food supply into this impossible burger stuff that's plant-based and maybe a few insects. And then eventually the plants, because we know because of the environmental situation, for many reasons, like volcanoes going off and the grand solar minimum and different things, that vegetables, unless you grow them indoors, might be difficult in the days to come. So then you just take and phase out of the vegetables and then eat more into the insects, because in most science fiction movies, the insects always survive. You know, the creature from the Dark Lagoon and like those other things.